Howard Storm's near-death experience is one of the most remarkable we've ever heard. He came out to meet us in California, but first he asked to see the Pacific Ocean, which we were happy to do. The hills are fun to drive, and the beaches in Malibu are known the world over for their incredible beauty.
One of the most remarkable examples of a frightening near-death experience is by Howard Storm. He truly has an excellent example of a frightening experience and how that experience can turn around a life and result in a much more positive, loving individual afterwards.
Tell us about what happened right before you were taken out of your body. In other words, give us an idea of the sickness, let's say, that triggered it.
I was 38 years old, college professor on an art tour. I was leading an art tour of students around Europe, and I had a perforation of the small stomach, taken to a hospital, but it was a Saturday. Socialized medicine in Paris. We were confident that I was going to get great medical care. Instead, after being taken to the emergency room and told that my situation was grave and that I had to have surgery immediately, I was taken to another hospital and parked there for 10 hours and never seen by a doctor, never given any medication, nothing whatsoever. Nobody took my blood pressure, temperature, anything, just nothing, just parked in a room and left. The doctors in the United States told me my situation was like having a burst appendix, not a appendicitis, it was like having a burst appendix, and that my life expectancy was about 5 hours. So in 10 hours, I was in very bad shape.
And this is because the acid in the stomach has leached into...
Yeah, and so, to put it crudely, I was not only infecting myself, I was dissolving myself.
Wow.
As I agitated my diaphragm, trying to inhale, exhale, it intensified the pain. So breathing was very, very painful. And so I was trying to breathe with as little movement as possible. And so to me, letting go was to stop trying to do that and just not breathe anymore. And I knew that it was going to be very easy for me to die because I had been trying not to die for hours. And if anyone's ever been there, you know when you're dying. I mean, it's not like a mystery. It's not like, oh, what a surprise. You know, this was been going on for a very long time. So I closed my eyes and went unconscious. And
what happened at the moment where you thought you were dead?
I just went out, just gone. And then I awoke from that, and I was completely, utterly surprised because I was sitting next to the bed, and not only was the pain gone, which had been my total reality, but I felt more alive than I've ever felt before. And what that means is my touch, my taste, my smell, most particularly in my instance, my sight. Instead of seeing a 160-degree field of vision, I was now seeing a 360-degree field of vision, which I thought was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Rather than having like a certain depth of field, I saw like total focused clarity, far and near simultaneously.
In my research, I've extensively reviewed all the skeptical arguments about the reality of near-death experience. In fact, there's over 20 skeptical explanations of near-death experience, and they cover the gamut of physiological, psychological, cultural-based explanations for that remarkable experience. And I will tell you the reason that there's so many skeptical explanations is that there's no one or several explanations that make sense even to the skeptics.
So I'm starting to yell at my wife, who's on the other side of the bed, still crying, and she has no reaction to me yelling at her. And I'm saying very crude things to get her attention, and very angry. So I decide that she is messing with me, because it was very typical of her that when she wanted to reject me, to just ignore me. So I turned to my roommate, who was a very kind 68-year-old Frenchman, who had been very nice to us the whole day. And I'm yelling and screaming at him, the same non-reaction from him. I'm screaming in his face, and his eyes are open, staring right through me as if I don't exist, which of course to him I didn't exist. But, so I'm getting very agitated, very upset. The room is bright and lit, and I hear people outside the room calling me by name, and they're saying in perfect English, this is a French hospital, and so I thought this was very weird. They're saying, "Howard, come on, hurry, let's go." So I go over to the doorway of the room, and there's people outside the room, out in the shadowy, darkened hallway. And I said, "I'm sick, I'm supposed to have surgery, we're waiting for a doctor." And they said, "We know all about you, we've been waiting for you for a long time, hurry up, it's time for you to go." And I said, "Are you from the surgeon? You know, I need surgery, you know." And they said, "Come on, let's go, no more time to talk about it, it's time to go." And so I'm like, I'm assuming, okay, we're off to surgery, they've come to take me.
So you're not, let me say something, let me interject something.
Yeah.
You're not sure, I mean, you're out of your body, but you haven't been able to really put that together yet. You still think for some reason you're stuck here.
Absolutely,
but
at
you're
all.
really not there.
Absolutely.
You're in another dimension.
My consciousness, my understanding, and I think that this is, we all take our understanding of who and what we are beyond this world. The people shepherd me down the hallway, and we're going along, and I'm becoming aware that there's something really wrong with all this. Is just not right. Well, first of all, there's no more architectural features. Now I'm aware that we're on the 4th floor of Cochin Hospital, but we never hit stairs. We never go up or down. We're just walking. No walls, no ceiling, just space and like.
What did it look like when you say space? Was it like light that slowly faded into darkness, or what did that look like? That transition, can you recall?
Shadowy, out of focus, very fuzzy, very indistinct, which was just the opposite of what I've been experiencing in the room, which was incredible detail and intensity of everything. And now everything is hazy and difficult to perceive. Very, very hard to even perceive the people who, as the atmosphere around us becomes darker and heavier, they become closer and closer and closer. So eventually we're bumping into each other, and they're moving me on, pushing me on. Eventually it's so dark.
When you say they, how many were there and what did they look like? How were they?
Originally maybe 8 or 10, but in a while I'm aware that there's many, maybe dozens or hundreds. I mean, of course there's no way for me to count, just a lot now. And I'm terrified, because I don't know where we're going. This has gone on for a long time, and they're starting to say ugly things, and I'm getting pretty sure that this is no longer the hospital. I mean, we've gone way too far to be. We've walked out of Paris by now. We're gone. I mean, we're far away. I'm sure that they don't mean me well, and I know that there's no doctor or operation in my future, you know. And I said, I'm not going any further, I'm done. I'm going back, which was a bluff, because I had no idea which way, back would be, and I didn't know where I was. It's darkness. Right. Wow. And they said, you're almost there, and they started to push and pull at me. Well, I had played some football in high school, and I'd been a tough guy, and I'd been in some fights and stuff, and so I started to defend myself. They're pushing, and so I'm like punching and, and trying to fend for myself, but there's a lot of them. Because of their own emptiness and their own torment, the only way that they could relate would be to want to bring someone else to their same place. Mm-hmm. Like if you're with a group of alcoholics or drug users, they want you to be high. I mean, nobody wants a sober person when everybody's getting drunk. Sure. If you're in a football crowd, you can't just sit there and not cheer. I mean, just looking at it like, what's the matter with you? Aren't you enjoying the game? And they wanted me to be one of them. And the horrible part of this is that I was one of them. I know that in many respects, they were my kindred brothers and sisters. Wow. And I was not a stranger to them or they to me. And all they were doing was initiating me into their world of loneliness, hopelessness, and despair. ultimately meaning their lack of God, their lack of love. You know, the Bible says love is God, God is love, and these are people who had rejected all of that, and when they left this world, they were living what they had basically sought all of their lives, except that in this world there weren't the pleasures of this world, like skies and trees and birds and joy and fun and stuff like that. So anyways, eventually they had enough of me that I was not able to respond anymore, which meant that I was laying on the ground in a fetal position. I had been scratched, bitten, torn, and the part that I don't talk about was they had done things to me that are too unpleasant for me to speak about and too obscene for me to want to relate. But I would suggest that there's no horror movie, no S&M movie or book or imagination that can begin to conceive of the things that they do without any hesitation.
How long did this particular part of the experience go on for?
Forever and ever and ever. I mean, and what I mean by that is time without any way of measuring it. I don't pray. I don't know how to pray. I can't pray. Forget it. And the voice said, pray to God. And I thought.
So 3 times?
Yeah. And I thought, well, when I was a kid, we prayed. I knew how to pray. So I'm trying to remember what it is to pray. And all I could remember was snatches of things that I had memorized when I was in school. So I've got, 70 years ago, our forefathers brought forth in this continent a new nation, casino like, no, not prayer. The quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth as the gentle rain upon the place beneath his tread. No, it's not a prayer. Glory, glory, hallelujah, his truth goes marching on. No, that's a song. But anytime I remembered something that had any reference to God in it, the people around me, in very, very powerful, obscene language, which I won't try to replicate, said, there is no God, nobody can hear you, and if you don't stop it, we're going to make it much worse for you. This was how I understood God. This is how I was taught God was this really, really nice guy, Jesus, loved me and cared about me, and when I was a little boy, I prayed to him, and, help me, I'm scared, stuff like that came to me. And I really felt like it was my only shot. I mean, this is either going to work or it's going to be what I think it's going to be, which is this darkness and torment forever. So I called out, Jesus, please help me. And with that, light came into the darkness, came upon me. Hands and arms came from this being of light, reached down and touched me. And when he touched me, all of my gore, which was much more profound than I had known, it was very gross, kind of just slowly dissolved away, and I became whole and intact. That was very secondary to what his touch did, which was internally it filled me with his love, which is no possible way to describe that, because it's far more intense than any human experience of love. I mean, if I took my mother's love and multiplied it by 100 or 1,000 times, that might be somewhat like what his love was. And his hands went under me while I'm feeling this healing and love, and he lifted me up without any effort and embraced me, and he held me, and I just wanted to be held by him, because this may sound strange, but I also knew that he liked me very much. He didn't just, this love wasn't like this abstract, sentimental thing. It was like, he knew me, and he liked me, and he cared about me, even though I had been very, very mean to him for my entire adult life. And I was aware that I had utterly and completely rejected him. And that he was going, that's okay, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's like, you're all right. You're all right. I'm here now.
Have there been any negative experiences? People going through NDEs, not having a very positive experience, something traumatic happening in a very negative sense?
About 5% of near-death experiences are truly frightening and can involve some very frightening, even hellish graphic imagery. And yet, if you follow those people for years after the experience, they may say it was the most valuable experience they ever had to learn about themselves, to grow and change and be better people.
There was a moment in time when you had to go back. How was that presented to you, and how did you find yourself coming back? How did that all take place?
When I asked all the questions that I could think of to ask, even making up questions just to perpetuate the fun of being with Jesus and these people, because it was like wonderful. I mean, getting all this attention, I'm getting all this information, and I've retained all that whole thing, and I just wanted that to go on forever. But when I just couldn't think of anything more to ask, I asked the one question that had been troubling me for a long time, which was, I said, as a statement, I'm ready to go to heaven. Jesus said, no, you've got to go back to the world and try to do what you were created to do in the first place. So we had a huge argument, and I'm here to tell you that I argued as strongly with Jesus as I possibly could for me to go to heaven, and he persuaded patiently and kindly and with good reasons why that wasn't going to happen, and I was going to come back here. It was a really interesting conversation, because I have to fall back on this stuff all the time in my life. When I get discouraged, depressed, lose my way, I go back to the things that he said and try and restore myself, to explain to myself and re-energize myself of why I'm here. And ultimately he persuaded me that I was going to go back, and that's all there was to it. And so I agreed to that. And when I agreed to that, there was no transition. I was just very rudely back in the bed,
Wow.
in the pain, and immediately the nurse who had been in the room a little earlier saying there was no doctor came and said, a doctor has arrived. This is at 9 o'clock at night in Paris. A doctor has arrived and we're going to have a surgery. And they threw my wife out of the room, prepped me, and took me to surgery, and I had the surgery on 10 o'clock that night.
Some people that when they come back, it seems like knowledge has been just downloaded into them. How can that be?
Great question. You know, we have many near-death experiences that describe what's called universal knowledge. When they're in these unearthly realms, they may become aware of knowledge far beyond what we have on Earth. They may be aware of, if we call truly universal knowledge, how everything fits together, details, things beyond our wildest scientific, mathematical awareness or understanding that we have here on Earth. Unfortunately, when they return to their earthly body, almost never do they retain any portion of that universal knowledge. And in fact, one near-death experiencer said, of course I can't remember that universal knowledge. It's like putting an entire ocean of knowledge into the thimble that's my brain.
Right.
My book came out over 2 years ago, and there's been a lot of time for the world, for skeptics, to come up with their best arguments as to why my conclusions, that being that there's an afterlife, a wonderful afterlife for all of us, isn't real. And that skeptic rebuttal has not come about. It isn't there. I mean, as best I can tell from having lived and breathed and shared that book now for over 2 years, the conclusions stand. We really do have an afterlife, all of us, a wonderful afterlife.
NDEs, near-death experience. When we sat down with Dr. Jeffrey Long and Howard Storr, we discovered, in fact, that there's something more to this reality, which may be just a digital simulation of something far greater. When a person passes over, when they die and they move into this other reality, everything is more vibrant, more alive.